Hello everybody, hope you're all doing well. Paul's come over for a week or two just to cause trouble. Actually a week, sorry, not a week or two. So I'm just showing him around Vancouver Island, and I think we're going to start off with something really close to home. So we've come down to Triple Falls, which is I did a video about Triple Falls a number of years ago now, maybe a year or two ago. And we're just going to go down and see how much water's down there. The fall color is kind of at the very tail end, but there might be a little bit down there. We'll have to wait and see. I'm going to see if I can find Gavin's drone. He lost it there about a year ago, so I don't know if it's going to be there. But if you want to see the video from last time, I'll just leave it up in the corner here, and yeah, I guess we'll just wander down. Hopefully we won't get in trouble with the landowner here. She's very particular about people trespassing on her property. So I think she's probably looking at us right now with her binoculars.
And a loaded shotgun.
All right, off we go. I can't believe how little water there is right now. We had a lot of rain 2 or 3 weeks ago. Rained for every day for a number of days, and there was a lot of water flow, but the last couple of weeks it's been quite dry and sunny, so there isn't an awful lot going on with the upper falls right now. So I think I'm going to go down to the lower falls and see if I can get something down there. I mean, there might be something here. I'm going to look at the lower falls first though, and maybe get a shot down there. Alright, now I was hoping for a little bit more fall colour for when Paul got here, but it seems that most of it is pretty much finished, and with the low waterfall, I don't know, I'm having a little bit of a hard time finding compositions. You have to realize that I've been to this location quite a few times, and I've managed to get some images that I really like, but you know, you don't want to end up taking the same old. Having said that, I found a shot here that's similar to one I took a number of years ago, but of course the leaves are quite a bit browner now, so, but hopefully it'll be different enough that it's not the same as the last one I took. So what I have here, I found these beautiful rocks covered in this deep green moss, and of course then we have these big leaf maples in the foreground. The hard part is trying to get everything in focus from the immediate foreground to the waterfall in the background. Now I could focus stack if I wanted to, but I'm going to see if I can try and get everything all in one shot. So as far as focus goes, I've done a number of little tests with this camera here, and you know, I've taken a number of images at different apertures. I'm going to stop all the way down to f/22, which generally isn't a great idea, just because you get diffraction with the lens. And what that means is that, you know, as the aperture gets smaller and smaller, the light starts to bend, and it causes the image, or the final image, to be unsharp. One thing you have to realize is that depth of field and sharpness are two different things. You could have an image that has tons of depth of field, but it might not be that sharp, whereas you have an image, say at f8, where it has less depth of field, but because of that aperture, it'll end up looking sharper than, say, one that's stopped down all the way down. With modern lenses, you know, if you stop down to f/22 or 32, there's a good chance that the lens is going to look quite unsharp. But I'm going to give it a go with this camera. This is a new camera, as you can see. It's a Fuji, but I just want to kind of test it out and see what I can get away with just taking one image. And the reason why I want to take it all in one shot is that I just don't want to faff around in post-processing. I'd just rather have one shot and be done with it. So I've taken a number of images at different apertures, and also focused on different areas in the frame. And what I'm focusing on is probably about 2/3 of the way in, and it seems that I can get everything in relative sharp focus. The only thing that isn't in sharp focus is the immediate foreground. It's a little bit out, but with this format of camera, you're probably not going to notice it very much, but we'll see in post-processing, see how it goes. As far as the image goes, it's okay. I mean, the waterfall is really beautiful right now, and I love these green, mossy rocks. Ideally, I would have put a polarizer on to cut out some of that glare, but I don't have one for this size diameter of lens, so I've opted to, well, obviously, to leave it out for now. And as predicted, the image at f/22 isn't as sharp as the image at f/8. The biggest difference is that I have all of this depth of field. Everything from foreground right to the waterfall looks like it's in sharp focus, whereas the image shot at f/8, I mean, it's definitely sharper where I focused, but the background and the foreground are out of focus. So for me to get that much depth at that aperture, I would have to focus stack. And this kind of draws me into another question to you guys, is that, you know, how important is it to you to have your images pin sharp from the very foreground to the background? Personally, I actually prefer a little bit of unsharpness in my images. I was looking at these photographs, and the one shot at f/8 is so sharp that you could cut yourself on it, but I don't necessarily want all my images to look that sharp from foreground to background. I actually like a little bit of blurriness, especially in the background. Just gives it a little bit more, makes it look a bit more real to my eyes. And of course, when you're just posting your images online, f/22, f/11, f/8, it's not going to make an awful lot of difference. Nobody is really going to notice. It's only when you start blowing up your images large that people are going to really take notice of the sharpness and the depth that you have in your images. So that's kind of my conclusion. Now, this particular image, it works okay. I love the foreground rocks and I love the waterfall. What I'm not keen about is the messy kind of sidelines, especially on the right and the left. And also there's a line there created by one of the leaves that I'm not keen on either. I could probably clone that out, but I think it just works better as a vertical. The lens that I was using, the 23mm, is exceptionally sharp at f/8. At f/22, you definitely get some diffraction in there, but it's not a deal breaker for me. I will probably use that lens at f/22 and maybe even above if the conditions arise where I have to use that f-stop. So one of the reasons why I like to invite other photographers on these vlogs of mine is so I can steal their compositions. So I took the image over there and it's okay, but looking straight at the waterfall, I don't know, there seems to be gaps in it because there's not much water flowing over it. But from this angle here, because you're looking at a bit of an angle, and it just gives the idea that the individual cascades are closer together, if that makes sense. So kind of from the side here. And also, actually we both noticed this when we first came down here, was that there's bubbles in the foreground here. So it creates this really nice movement. So you need quite a long shutter speed for that. So what I've done is, now the lens I was using just a minute ago, I didn't have any filters that would fit it. So I'm using a different lens here. This is a 32-64, and it just happens to be 77mm. So I'm able to put a breakthrough photography 10-stop ND filter on there to really slow the shutter speed down. So I've got it down to 30 seconds, and what I'm doing is just trying to create that nice flow of bubbles in the foreground. Just adds a bit of interest to the foreground. Otherwise it'd just be a waterfall with no other interest. It looks quite good on the back of the camera, but you know, as always, you know, got to open it up post-production. So I'm taking some shots, really slow shutter speed, 30 seconds. And then from there, I'm not really keen on that kind of mushy water look. And also some of the foliage around the waterfall is moving. So I'm taking some other shots without the ND filter at a higher ISO and a faster shutter speed, just to kind of stop the motion of those things. And also the water, give it a little bit more texture. So I like to keep it around a fifth of a second for this waterfall. So we'll see how that turns out. I'll put them into Photoshop and I'll show you the images if they work out. All right.
What I really enjoy about photographing waterfalls, especially at slow shutter speeds, is the unpredictable nature of the results, especially when they have bubbles in the foreground like this, because the bubbles are always moving at a different velocity. Sometimes they take a different path. So even though I knew that I was going to get a swirl, each image is slightly different, but this was my favorite out of the bunch. Now, as predicted, the foliage did move around quite a bit during that 30-second exposure. So I took another exposure with a faster shutter speed, higher ISO, and just layered that with the slow shutter speed image and painted in the parts that were blurry or that I didn't want blurry. And also, the water didn't have an awful lot of texture in it, so I painted some texture back in there. So overall, I was really quite happy with the results that I got. Once again, thank you everybody for watching this week's video. If you did enjoy it, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. And stay tuned for next week's video. I'm going to try and come out with one a little bit earlier this time, and eventually there'll be every Saturday again. Until then, happy shooting.